She looked at my hoodie, then at my platinum ticket, and sneered. "This section is for paying customers, sweetie, not lottery winners." That senior flight attendant thought she was just kicking a disruptive girl off a flight to London. She didn't know that the girl she just humiliated was the only daughter of the man who owns the digital backbone of global aviation. She didn't know that with one tearful phone call, 152 airports would go dark. 5 minutes later, the departure screens flashed red, the control towers went silent, and an entire airline realized they had just made a billion-dollar mistake. This is the story of how arrogance met absolute power, and the check came due immediately. The rain at JFK International Airport was relentless, hammering against the glass walls of Terminal 4 like thousands of tiny, angry fists. But inside the first-class lounge, the storm was merely a silent movie playing in the background. It was quiet, smelling of expensive espresso and old leather. Chloe Banks sat in the corner, her knees pulled up to her chest in a giant, oversized grey hoodie that had seen better days. At 22, she didn't look like the other patrons. She didn't have the tailored suit of the hedge fund manager to her left, or the dazzling jewelry of the socialite to her right. She wore faded black leggings, battered Converse sneakers, and headphones that cost more than most people's cars, though you couldn't tell by looking at them. She was exhausted. She had just spent 3 weeks in rural Kenya, overseeing the installation of a new logistics grid for her father's charity. She hadn't slept in 24 hours. She just wanted to get on the plane, curl up in her lie-flat pod, and wake up in London. Flight 189 to Heathrow, first class and Diamond Medallion members are now invited to board. The announcer's voice was smooth as silk. Chloe grabbed her backpack. It was a simple canvas bag, but inside was a laptop encrypted with security keys that could access the mainframe of Banks Logistics and Data, the company that effectively ran the back-end software for 60% of the world's cargo and commercial flights. She joined the priority queue. Ahead of her, a man in a sharp navy suit scanned his boarding pass. The gate agent smiled brightly. "Welcome back, Mr. Henderson. Have a pleasant flight." Chloe stepped up. She held out her phone with the QR code. The gate agent, a younger man named Kevin, glanced at her. He didn't smile. He looked at her hoodie, then at the first-class indicator on his screen. He frowned, typing something on his keyboard. "Is there a problem?" Chloe asked, her voice raspy from lack of sleep. "Just checking validity," Kevin muttered. He couldn't find a reason to deny her, so he waved her through with a suspicious look. "Go ahead." Chloe walked down the jet bridge, the cool air of the tunnel hitting her face. She stepped onto the plane, turning left toward the first-class cabin. That was where she met Brenda. Brenda Miller was the chief purser. She had been flying for 30 years, and she wore her seniority like a weapon. Her uniform was impeccable, her hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde rigidity, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. She was currently fluffing a pillow for Mr. Henderson. When Chloe stepped into the cabin, Brenda's head snapped up. Her eyes did a quick vertical scan. Hoodie, messy bun, sneakers, black skin. The smile vanished. "Excuse me, miss," Brenda said, her voice dropping an octave. "Economy boarding is through the second door. You need to turn around and go back to the terminal, or wait for general boarding." Chloe stopped. She was too tired for this. "I'm in seat 2A, she said, holding up her phone. Brenda didn't even look at the phone. She stepped into the aisle, physically blocking Chloe's path. "I don't think you heard me. This is the first-class cabin. We don't allow pass-throughs. You need to exit and use the correct door." "I have a ticket for this cabin," Chloe said, her patience fraying. "Seat 2A. If you look at the manifest—" "I know the manifest," Brenda snapped, loud enough that Mr. Henderson and 2 other passengers looked up. "Seat 2A is reserved for a Chloe Banks. And frankly, you don't look like you can afford the taxes on this ticket, let alone the fare. Now stop holding up my boarding process and get to economy." The air in the cabin shifted. It became heavy, charged with an ugly, silent tension. "My name is Chloe Banks," she said, her hand trembling slightly. "Not from fear, but from the adrenaline of pure shock, and I don't need to justify my appearance to you. Move!" Brenda's face went red. She wasn't used to being challenged, certainly not by someone who looked like a college dropout. She pressed the intercom button on the wall. "Captain, we have a security issue in the forward cabin. Non-compliant passenger refusing to vacate." The standoff lasted only 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. Passengers were now filing into the plane, peering through the curtains, whispering. Phones were coming out. The lenses of iPhones and Samsungs peeked through the gaps in the seats. Captain Harrison, a grey-haired man with a kind but weary face, stepped out of the cockpit. He looked at Brenda, then at Chloe. "What seems to be the trouble?" "She's refusing to go to her assigned cabin, Captain," Brenda lied smoothly. "She's becoming aggressive. She's disturbing the first-class passengers." "I am in my assigned cabin," Chloe said, her voice shaking. She held her phone out to the captain. "Look, 2A, paid in full, full fare." The captain looked at the phone. It was clear as day. Chloe Banks, 2A, first class. He looked at Brenda. "Brenda, she has the ticket." Brenda huffed, crossing her arms. "It's probably stolen, or a glitch. Look at her, Captain. Does she look like a first-class passenger to you? She smells like dirt," Chloe gasped. She had been on a construction site in Kenya, yes, but she had showered at the lounge. That was a blatant, malicious lie. "I demand you check her ID against the credit card used to book this," Brenda insisted, doubling down. "We have protocols for fraud. I will not have my cabin compromised by scammers." "Brenda, that's not necessary," the captain tried to interject. "It is necessary," Brenda shouted. She turned to Chloe. "Let me see your ID." Chloe reached into her backpack. As she did, her hoodie sleeve pulled up, revealing a simple, woven bracelet given to her by the village elder in Kenya. Brenda scoffed audibly. Chloe pulled out her passport and handed it to the captain. He opened it. "Chloe Banks," he read, "born in New York." "And the credit card?" Brenda demanded. "I bet it's a corporate card she stole from a boss." "It is a corporate card," Chloe said coldly. "My father's company." "Aha!" Brenda pointed a manicured finger at her. "I knew it. Sugar daddy or stolen daddy's card. Listen to me, you little brat. I have been flying this route since before you were born. I know who belongs here and who doesn't. You are making everyone uncomfortable." She turned to the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. We are dealing with a fraud situation." Mr. Henderson, the man in the suit, spoke up. "Actually, she's not bothering me. You are. The girl has a ticket. Let her sit down." "Thank you," Chloe whispered. Brenda glared at Mr. Henderson. "Sir, safety regulations require us to vet any suspicious passengers. If you want to fly today, I suggest you let me do my job." She turned back to Chloe, her eyes filled with venom. "Get off my plane, now, or I call the airport police and have you dragged off in handcuffs. You're banned." "You're kicking me off?" Chloe asked, her voice quiet. "For what?" "Belligerence, failing to comply with crew instructions, suspected fraud." "Take your pick," Brenda sneered. "Grab your trash bag and get out." Chloe looked at the captain. He looked pained, but he clearly didn't want to undermine his chief purser in front of a full cabin. He sighed. "Miss, perhaps it's best if we sort this out at the gate. If it's a misunderstanding, we can rebook you." "There is no misunderstanding," Chloe said. She felt a cold calm wash over her. It was the same calm her father, Riley Banks, used before he acquired a competitor and dismantled them piece by piece. She took her passport back from the captain's hand. She picked up her backpack. "Okay," Chloe said. She looked Brenda dead in the eye. "I'll get off. But I want you to remember this moment, Brenda. I want you to remember that you had a choice to be kind, or just simply professional, and you chose to be a bully." "Save the speech." Brenda waved her hand dismissively. "Bye-bye." Chloe walked back up the aisle, the walk of shame. Every eye in economy was on her as she was escorted against the flow of boarding passengers. People whispered. Must be drugs. She probably tried to sneak in. Typical. She stepped off the plane and back into the jet bridge. The cool air hit her again, but this time her face was burning hot. She walked up the ramp to the gate. Kevin, the gate agent, looked surprised. "Miss, what happened?" "They kicked me off," Chloe said. She didn't stop. She walked straight past him, finding a quiet row of seats near the window, overlooking the tarmac. She could see the nose of the plane. She could see the pilots doing their checks. She sat down. She took a deep breath, trying to stop her hands from shaking. She unlocked her phone. She didn't open Instagram. She didn't open Twitter. She opened her contacts. She scrolled past friends, past her assistant, past her doctor. She stopped at a contact, simply named Dad. She pressed call. It rang once. "Pumpkin?" The voice on the other end was deep, warm, and sounded surprised. "You should be in the air by now. Everything okay?" "No, Dad," Chloe said, and at the sound of his voice the dam broke. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "They kicked me off the plane." "Who did?" Riley Banks's voice changed instantly. The warmth evaporated, replaced by the steel tone of a man who commanded a global empire. "The chief purser. She said I didn't look like I could afford the ticket. She called me a fraud in front of everyone. She humiliated me, Dad." There was a silence on the line. A silence so profound it felt like the air pressure in the terminal dropped. "Are you safe?" "Yes, I'm at the gate." "Stay there," Riley said. "Do not move. I'm going to make a call." "Dad, don't do anything crazy," Chloe said, wiping her eyes. "I'm not going to be crazy, Chloe," Riley said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I'm going to be efficient. Did they take off yet?" "No. They're pushing back in 10 minutes. "They aren't going anywhere," Riley said. "In fact, nobody is going anywhere." The line went dead. Chloe lowered the phone. She looked out the window. The rain was falling harder now. She watched the ground crew loading the last of the luggage into Flight 189. She checked her watch. It was 4:15 p.m. By 4:20 p.m., the world would change. 4,000 miles away, in a glass-walled office on the 80th floor of a skyscraper in downtown Seattle, Riley Banks stared at the rain streaking his own window. It was raining on both coasts today. Riley was a man who didn't believe in anger. Anger was messy. Anger was inefficient. He believed in leverage. He believed in consequences. He sat at a desk made of reclaimed black oak. On the wall behind him was a massive digital map of the world, glowing with thousands of moving green dots. Each dot represented a commercial flight currently in the air. Each dot relied on Blade, the bank's logistics and aviation data exchange. It was a system Riley had built from the ground up 20 years ago. Before Blade, airlines used a patchwork of outdated legacy systems to manage passenger manifests, fuel loads, weight distribution, and gate assignments. Riley had unified it all into one cloud-based neural network. It was the central nervous system of modern aviation. He pressed a button on his intercom. "Get Arthur on the line. Priority 1. 10 seconds later, the face of Arthur Penhaligon, the chief technology officer of Banks Logistics, appeared on a large monitor. Arthur looked like he hadn't slept in a week, which was standard for him. "Riley, we're going over the Q3 projections. I wasn't expecting—" "Arthur," Riley interrupted, his voice terrifyingly level. "Initiate Protocol 0 for client code, Skyline Alpha 1. Arthur froze. He blinked, adjusting his glasses. "I'm sorry, Riley. Did you say Protocol 0 for Skyline Airlines?" "That is correct, Riley. Protocol 0 is the nuclear option. It revokes the SSL certificates and disconnects the API handshake for the entire airline. It will ground their fleet. It will lock them out of the manifest servers. They won't be able to print a boarding pass, let alone file a flight plan." "I am aware of the technical specifications, Arthur. I wrote the code. Arthur hesitated. Sir, Skyline is our third largest contract. If we pull the plug, we're talking about breach of contract, millions in lawsuits, regulators swarming us. The board will have a stroke. Let me handle the board, Riley said, leaning forward. Arthur, 10 minutes ago, a senior purser on a Skyline flight humiliated my daughter. She profiled her, called her a thief, and kicked her off the plane because she was wearing a hoodie. Arthur's jaw tightened. He had known Chloe since she was a baby. He had taught her how to code Python when she was 10. Chloe is she okay? She's crying at gate B42, Riley said. They treated her like garbage because they didn't think she had the power to fight back. I want to show them exactly how much power she has. Riley paused, his eyes hardening. Actually, Arthur, escalate it. Skyline shares a code share server with the entire Atlantic Alliance, doesn't it? Yes, sir. If we pull the Skyline node, the cascading update will force a reboot on the regional hubs. JFK, Heathrow, De Gaulle, O'Hare. Do it, Riley commanded. Suspend the license. Revoke the keys. Now. Sir, that will shut down approximately 152 airports. Then they better hope they have good customer service, Riley said. Execute. Arthur nodded slowly. He typed a command on his keyboard. A prompt appeared on his screen. Confirm system purge. YN. He hit Y. Done, Arthur said softly. Updates are pushing to the edge servers now. Time to impact. 30 seconds. Riley hung up. He turned his chair back to the giant map on the wall. He watched. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then the green dots over New York started to blink red. Then Chicago. Then London. Then Los Angeles. The map, once a calming sea of green, began to bleed. Back at JFK, inside the cockpit of Flight 189, Captain Harrison was going through the pre-flight checklist. The engines were humming, the cabin was pressurized, and they were 5 minutes from pushback. Fuel load checked, the co-pilot, a young man named David, said. Flaps set to 5. Altimeters set. Good, Harrison said. Let's get this show on the road. I want to make up the time we lost with that passenger drama. Suddenly, a loud ping echoed through the cockpit. Both pilots looked at the Central Flight Management System, FMS, screen. It flickered. What was that? Harrison asked. The screen went black. Did we lose power to the bus? David asked, his hands flying to the circuit breakers. No, breakers are in. Generators are online. The screen flickered back on, but instead of the navigation charts and flight data, a stark red box appeared in the center of the display. Fatal error. License revoked. Connection to server lost. Unable to verify flight plan. System lockout initiated. License revoked? Harrison frowned. What the hell does that mean? Is this a software update glitch? Captain, David's voice pitched up. Look at the ACRs. The ACARs, Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, the text messaging system pilots use to talk to the ground, was scrolling messages like a slot machine. System failure. Return to gate. Return to gate. Global stop. Harrison grabbed his radio mic. Kennedy Ground, Skyline 189. We are experiencing a major computer failure. We have lost our flight plan and weight data. Requesting to hold position. Usually, the radio frequency was a constant chatter of instructions. But now, it was a cacophony of confused voices. Kennedy Ground, Delta 442, our computers just wiped. Ground, British Airways 001. We can't access our load sheets. Tower, nobody can move. What is going on? The air traffic controller's voice came on, sounding on the verge of panic. All stations, hold position. We have lost radar data tags. The main system is down. I repeat, the main system is down. Do not move. Do not push back. Inside the cabin of Flight 189, Brenda was walking down the aisle with a tray of champagne, still feeling the smug satisfaction of having cleaned up her cabin. She leaned over to Mr. Henderson. Champagne, sir? We should be underway shortly. About time, Henderson grumbled. Suddenly the plane's engine spooled down. The hum died away, leaving an eerie silence. The overhead lights flickered and switched to a dimmer emergency setting. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged 3 times, the signal for the purser to pick up the interphone. Brenda frowned. She walked to the galley and picked up the phone. "Captain?" "Brenda, secure the cabin." Captain Harrison's voice was tight. "We aren't going anywhere." "What? Why? Is it the weather?" "No," Harrison said. "The plane is fine. But the computers. Brenda, the entire airline just went offline. We're being told to deplane everyone." "Deplane?" Brenda shrieked. "We just boarded. We're fully catered. It's not just us, Brenda. Look out the window." Brenda put the phone down and looked out the porthole in the galley door. The tarmac, usually a choreographed ballet of tugs, baggage carts, and taxiing planes, had turned into a parking lot. Nothing was moving. Every single plane at every single gate was sitting still. Inside the terminal, she could see the massive glass windows of the departure lounge. Even from this distance, she could see the chaos. People were crowding the windows. The massive flight information boards that usually listed destinations and times were all displaying the same thing. Cancelled, cancelled, cancelled. Brenda felt a cold knot form in her stomach. This wasn't a glitch. This was an event. She walked back into the first-class cabin. The passengers were murmuring. "What's happening?" Mr. Henderson asked. "Why did the engine stop?" I'm not sure, sir," Brenda stammered, her composure cracking. "Technical difficulties." "We'll fix it," someone shouted from row 4. Back inside the terminal, Chloe Banks was still sitting by the window. She hadn't moved. She watched the red lights flashing on the emergency vehicles that were now racing across the tarmac, though there was no fire. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her dad. "Look at the board." Chloe looked up at the TV screen above the gate desk. It had been showing CNN. Now it was a solid blue screen with white text. "System alert. Banks Logistics Service interruption. Error code 404. User not authorized." Kevin, the gate agent who had let her through, was frantically typing on his computer. He picked up the PA microphone, his hands shaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, attention in the terminal. We are currently experiencing a global system outage. All flights are grounded until further notice. Please do not approach the desk. We have no information." A groan went up from the crowd of hundreds. Chloe looked back at her phone. Another text from Dad. "The CEO of Skyline Airlines is calling me. I'm not answering. I want them to sweat for exactly 15 minutes. Then I'm going to tell them why they lost $1 billion today." Chloe typed back, "Dad, Brenda is going to blame me." The reply was instant. "She won't get the chance. I'm sending a team to get you. Sit tight." On the plane, the captain's voice boomed over the PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Harrison. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Due to a critical failure of the airline's reservation and navigation network, we have been ordered to deplane immediately. This appears to be a system-wide shutdown affecting all airports. Please gather your belongings." The cabin erupted. "This is ridiculous," Brenda yelled, losing her professional mask entirely. "How does the system just fail?" She stormed toward the cockpit door just as Captain Harrison opened it. "Captain, this is unacceptable. Who is responsible for this?" Harrison looked at her, his face pale. He was holding a printed sheet of paper that had just come through the backup dot matrix printer, the only thing still working. "We just got a message from headquarters," Harrison said quietly. "They identified the source of the lockout." "Well, who is it? Terrorists? Hackers?" "No," Harrison said. He looked at the paper, then he looked at Brenda with a strange expression, a mix of confusion and dawning horror. "The error message says the lockout was initiated manually by the vendor." "The vendor?" "Banks Logistics," Harrison said. "The people who run our software." Brenda froze. The name sounded familiar. Banks? Chloe Banks. "Seat 2A, Harrison whispered, realizing it at the same time. The girl. The one you kicked off. Her name was Banks. Brenda felt the blood drain from her face. It's a common name. There are thousands of Bankses. Maybe, Harrison said, his eyes narrowing. But I don't believe in coincidences, Brenda. You kicked a girl named Banks off the plane, and 5 minutes later, Banks Logistics shuts down the entire world. He stepped closer to her. What exactly did you say to her? Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I just enforced policy. You better pray that's all you did, Harrison growled. Because if you're the reason 152 airports just shut down, you're not just fired. You're going to be famous. The headquarters of Skyline Airlines in Dallas was usually a place of quiet, corporate efficiency. Today, it was a war zone. Richard Sterling, the CEO of Skyline, was a man who prided himself on control. He wore $3,000 suits and had a smile that could sell ice to polar bears. But right now, his tie was loosened, his face was a mottled purple, and he was screaming at his chief information officer. What do you mean, locked out? We own the servers. Break the encryption. We can't, Richard, the CIO shouted back, sweating profusely. It's not a hack. It's a license revocation. The source code for our entire operation. Reservations, crew scheduling, weight and balance. It's all leased from Banks Logistics. They pulled the kill switch. Get Riley Banks on the phone, Sterling roared. I'll sue him into the Stone Age. This is breach of contract. This is industrial sabotage. We've been trying, his secretary said, her voice trembling. His office isn't picking up. They said he's in a meeting. A meeting? My airline is bleeding $10 million a minute, and he's in a meeting. Sterling grabbed the phone himself. He dialed Riley's private number, a number he had only used twice in 5 years. It rang, and rang, and rang. Finally, on the 10th ring, the line clicked open. This is Banks. The voice was calm, indifferent. It was the voice of a man who was watching a fire, he started, and enjoying the warmth. Riley, Sterling barked. What the hell is going on? My entire fleet is grounded. My screens are blue. Do you have any idea the chaos you're causing? I have federal regulators on line 1 and the FAA on line 2. I imagine it is quite stressful, Richard, Riley replied smoothly. Stressful? It's criminal. Turn it back on. Right now, or I swear to God, my lawyers will own your company by morning. Your lawyers can't file a brief if their flight is cancelled, Richard, Riley said. And as for owning my company, you seem to forget who owns your data. Read your contract. Section 14, paragraph B. Service provider reserves the right to terminate access immediately in cases of gross reputational harm or violation of ethical standards. Sterling paused. The room went silent. Ethical standards. What are you talking about? We paid our invoice last week. This isn't about money. Then what is it? Did we offend a partner? Is this about the merger rumors? It's about a passenger, Riley said. Sterling blinked. He looked around at his executives, bewildered. A passenger? You shut down 152 airports. Over a passenger. Specifically, a passenger on flight 189 out of JFK. Seat 2A. Sterling covered the mouthpiece. Get me the manifest for flight 189, now! His operations manager frantically tapped on a backup laptop. I can't pull it up, sir. The system is down. Use the paper backups! Call the gate! Sterling screamed. He uncovered the phone. Riley, stop playing games. Who is in seat 2A? My daughter, Riley said. The temperature in Sterling's office seemed to drop 20 degrees. Your daughter? Chloe, Riley continued. She's 22. She was flying home from building a network grid for an orphanage in Kenya. She was tired. She was wearing a hoodie, and about 20 minutes ago, your senior purser, a woman named Brenda Miller, decided that my daughter didn't look like she belonged in first class. She publicly shamed her, accused her of fraud, and kicked her off the plane. Sterling felt the blood drain from his face. He sank into his leather chair. Riley, look, if there was a misunderstanding with the crew, there was no misunderstanding, Richard. It was discrimination, pure and simple. Your employee looked at a young black woman in comfortable clothes and decided she was a criminal. She didn't check her ID properly. She didn't listen to reason. She just exerted power because she thought she could. Riley's voice dropped, becoming deadly serious. You see, Richard, your employee made a calculation. She calculated that my daughter was powerless. She calculated that she could humiliate her without consequence. I am simply correcting her math. Sterling wiped sweat from his forehead. He was a businessman. He knew when he was beaten. He knew that even if he sued Riley, the discovery phase would reveal the racism incident, and the PR fallout would destroy the airline faster than the technical glitch. What do you want, Riley? Sterling asked quietly. Name it. I don't want your money, Riley said. I have enough. Then what? I want 3 things, and I want them in the next 10 minutes, or I wipe the databases permanently. You'll be manually writing tickets for the next 5 years. Okay, Sterling said breathlessly. Okay. What are they? First, Riley said, the plane does not leave the gate without Chloe. She takes her seat. Seat 2A. Done, obviously. Second, Brenda Miller is to be removed from that flight immediately. But she is not just fired. I want her to personally apologize to Chloe, and I want her to do it while you are on the phone, listening. Sterling grimaced. Riley, union rules. Do I look like I care about union rules right now? Make it happen. Okay. Third, Riley said. I want you to issue a press release. You will admit that the system outage was triggered by a safety protocol failure regarding passenger rights. You will own this. If you spin this as a glitch, I will leak the audio of the incident that my daughter recorded. Sterling closed his eyes. It was a PR nightmare. But the alternative was bankruptcy. Fine, Sterling whispered. We have a deal. Turn the servers on. Not yet, Riley said. Call the gate at JFK. Put me on speaker. I want to hear the apology first. Back at JFK, Gate B42, the chaos in the terminal was deafening. Thousands of people were angry, confused, and shouting at the gate agents. Kevin, the young agent, was looking like he was about to cry. Then, the red phone on the wall rang. This phone never rang. It was the direct line to the war room in Dallas. Kevin picked it up. Gate B42, this is Kevin. Kevin, a voice boomed. This is Richard Sterling, CEO of Skyline. Kevin nearly dropped the phone. Mr. Sterling, listen to me very carefully. Do you have a passenger named Chloe Banks at the gate? Kevin looked over the counter. Chloe was still sitting by the window, headphones around her neck, staring calmly at the plane. Yes, sir. She's sitting right there. Is the plane still at the gate? Yes, sir. Everyone is still on board, but we were about to deplane. Do not deplane, Sterling shouted. Get the captain on the radio. Tell him to bring the purser, Brenda Miller, to the top of the jet bridge immediately, and bring Miss Banks to the desk. Yes, sir. Kevin ran out from behind the podium. He approached Chloe. He looked different now. Terrified. Respectful. Miss Banks? Chloe looked up. Yes? The CEO is on the phone. He wants you to come to the desk. And Captain Harrison is coming out to meet you. Chloe stood up. She adjusted her hoodie. She picked up her backpack. Okay, she said softly. She walked to the desk. Kevin handed her the phone, but put it on speaker so he could hear. Hello? Chloe said. Miss Banks? Richard Sterling's voice was dripping with apology. This is Richard Sterling. I cannot express how sorry I am for the treatment you received. I have your father on the other line. Hi, Dad, Chloe said. Hey, Pumpkin. Riley's voice came through, warm again. We're almost done fixing this. Just one last piece of business. At that moment, the door from the jet bridge opened. Captain Harrison walked out. Behind him, looking pale and shaky, was Brenda Miller. The crowd in the terminal fell silent, sensing the drama. They saw the captain. They saw the gate agent. They saw the girl in the hoodie holding the red phone. Brenda looked at Chloe. Then she looked at the phone Kevin was holding up. "Miss Miller?" Sterling's voice cut through the air. "Are you there?" "Yes." "Mr. Sterling," Brenda whispered, "you have created a very expensive situation for this company, Miss Miller," Sterling said, his voice echoing in the quiet gate area. "You have discriminated against a valued passenger. You have violated our core values. And you have 5 seconds to make it right, or you will be facing a lawsuit for damages that will take everything you own." Brenda trembled. She looked at Chloe. Chloe didn't look angry. She just looked tired. She looked human. Brenda started. Her throat was dry. She had spent 30 years looking down on people like this. It was physically painful for her to bend, but she saw the way the captain was looking at her, with disgust. She saw the passengers in the terminal, watching. "I apologize," Brenda said, her voice thin. "Louder," Riley's voice came from the phone. "And be specific." Brenda took a deep breath. Tears of humiliation welled in her eyes. "I apologize, Miss Banks," Brenda said, her voice cracking. "I judged you by your appearance. I was wrong to say you couldn't afford the ticket. I was wrong to call you a fraud. I'm sorry." Chloe looked at her for a long moment. "I don't need your apology for me, Brenda," Chloe said, her voice clear and strong. "I know who I am. I know what I'm worth. But I accept it for the next girl who looks like me, so she doesn't have to go through this." "Thank you," Brenda whispered. "Captain Harrison," Sterling said, "escort Miss Miller off the premises. Her employment is terminated effective immediately. Please retrieve Miss Banks's bag and ensure she is seated comfortably in 2A, and get that plane in the air." "Yes, sir," Harrison said. He turned to Brenda. "Give me your badge." Brenda unclipped her wings, the plastic wings she had worn for decades. She handed them over. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of the terminal, a ghost in a uniform she no longer had the right to wear. "Miss Banks," Harrison said, gesturing to the jet bridge. "Please, after you." Chloe nodded. "Dad, you can turn it back on now." "Already done," Riley said. "Have a safe flight, Pumpkin. Call me when you land." As Chloe stepped onto the jet bridge, the screens behind the desk flickered. The blue error message vanished. The flight board refreshed. Status on time. A cheer went up in the terminal. The crowd clapped. They didn't know the whole story. They just knew the systems were back. But Kevin, the gate agent, watched Chloe walk down the tunnel, and he knew he had just witnessed a legend. The walk back down the jet bridge felt different this time. The first time, it had been a walk of shame, a tunnel of humiliation with the cold, damp air biting at her cheeks. Now, it felt like entering a sanctuary that had been cleansed. When Chloe stepped back onto Flight 189, the atmosphere in the cabin was so quiet you could hear the hum of the auxiliary power unit. Every single passenger in first class stopped what they were doing. The hedge fund manager, the socialite, the tech bros, they all looked up. But this time there were no sneers. There was no judgment. There was only a heavy, palpable respect, mixed with a healthy dose of fear. They knew. They didn't know the specifics of the servers or the codes, but they knew that this girl in the hoodie was the reason they had sat on the tarmac for an hour, and she was the reason they were finally moving. Chloe walked to seat 2A, her seat. The pillow Brenda had fluffied for Mr. Henderson was gone. The cabin had been refreshed. A new flight attendant, a younger woman named Sarah, was standing there. Sarah looked terrified. She held a silver tray with a hot towel and a glass of vintage sparkling water. "Miss Banks," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "Welcome back. I have replaced all the bedding at your seat. We also have a fresh amenity kit for you. Is there anything at all I can get you?" Chloe looked at Sarah. She saw the fear in the woman's eyes. She hated that. She didn't want to be feared. She just wanted to be treated like a human being. "I'm okay, thank you," Chloe said, giving her a tired, genuine smile. "Just some water is fine. You don't have to be nervous. I'm not going to shut the plane down again." Sarah let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for 10 minutes. She smiled back. A real smile this time. "Thank you, Miss Banks." Chloe sat down. She buckled her seatbelt. "Across the aisle, Mr." Henderson, the man in the navy suit who had tried to defend her earlier, leaned over. "You know," he said, his voice low, "I've been flying this route for 15 years. I've seen senators, rock stars, and royalty sit in that seat, but I have never seen anyone wield power like that." Chloe adjusted her headphones. "I didn't want to do it." "That's why it worked," Henderson said. He raised his glass of champagne to her. "To the underdog." Chloe nodded, acknowledging the toast, and put her headphones on. As the plane finally taxied to the runway, Captain Harrison's voice came over the intercom. It was steady, professional, but there was an edge to it that hadn't been there before. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We are now number 1 for departure. I want to personally apologize for the significant delay and the disturbance during boarding. At Skyline Airlines, we strive for excellence and respect for every passenger. Today, we failed that standard. We have corrected the issue. The crew member involved has been removed. We are now going to get you to London as smooth and fast as possible. Thank you for your patience." The engines roared to life, pressing Chloe back into her seat. As the wheels lifted off the wet pavement of JFK, leaving the lights of New York behind, Chloe watched the city disappear into the clouds. She thought it was over. She thought the drama was left back at the gate with Brenda. She was wrong. While Flight 189 was cruising at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, the world below was waking up to the story, and the internet, unlike an airline schedule, never sleeps. Midway through the flight, Chloe decided to connect to the in-flight Wi-Fi to check her emails. She needed to send a report to her team in Kenya about the successful grid installation. As soon as her phone connected, it nearly froze. The notifications weren't coming in one by one. They were a solid wall of buzzing. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, WhatsApp, iMessage. Everything was exploding. 99 plus missed calls. 400 plus new Instagram followers per minute. Trending topic #1, #boycott Skyline. Trending topic #2, #the girl in the hoodie. Trending topic #3, #Brenda is over Chloe frowned. How? She opened Twitter, X. The top post was a video. It was a shaky cell phone video, clearly filmed by a passenger in economy who had been standing near the curtain during the initial confrontation. The video showed everything. It showed Brenda blocking the aisle. It picked up the audio perfectly. "Does she look like a first-class passenger to you? She smells like dirt. I bet it's a corporate card she stole from a boss. Get off my plane." The caption on the video read, "Racist flight attendant kicks black girl off plane for wearing a hoodie. 5 minutes later, the dad shuts down the whole airline." Legendary. The video had 12 million views. It had been posted 2 hours ago. Chloe scrolled down. The comments were a mixture of rage and vindication. "At Flyboy 99, I'm a pilot. You don't mess with the Banks family. That FA just ended her whole career." At Justice Warrior. The way she stayed calm, though. I would have thrown hands. She is a queen. At News Daily. Breaking. Skyline. Airline stock plummets 12% in after-hours trading following global system outage linked to discrimination incident. Chloe felt a strange sensation. She wasn't seeking fame. She hated attention. But seeing thousands of strangers defending her, seeing the world call out the injustice she had faced alone in that cabin, it felt like a heavy weight was lifting off her chest. Suddenly, a news alert popped up from TMZ. Identified, the hoodie heiress is Chloe Banks, daughter of tech mogul Riley Banks, and she's actually a philanthropist building internet for orphanages. Chloe groaned. Hoodie heiress. The nickname was going to stick. She looked up. Sarah, the flight attendant, was walking down the aisle with the dinner service. She looked at Chloe, then glanced at Chloe's phone screen, which was lit up with notifications. "Miss Banks?" Sarah whispered. "Yeah?" "The captain just got a message via ACRs from the company HQ," Sarah said. "Apparently, there are press at Heathrow. A lot of them." "Press?" Chloe's eyes widened. "For me?" "The video went viral, ma'am. Like global viral. The BBC is waiting at the gate. CNN is there. There's a rumor that Oprah wants an interview." Chloe sank deeper into her seat. "I just want to go to my hotel and sleep." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "The captain has arranged for a private car to meet us on the tarmac. You won't have to go through the terminal. We're going to park at a remote stand." "Thank you," Chloe said. "Please tell the captain thank you." The rest of the flight passed in a blur. Chloe couldn't sleep. She watched the follower count on her social media climb. 100K, 500K, 1 million. People were digging up her old photos. Photos of her in Kenya, covered in dust, laying fiber optic cables. Photos of her graduating from MIT at 19. The narrative was shifting rapidly from rich girl gets revenge to brilliant engineer wrongly profiled. Brenda hadn't just insulted a millionaire's daughter. She had insulted a genius who was actively making the world better, and the internet loved a hero as much as it loved a villain. Heathrow Airport, London. 6 a.m. The landing was smooth. As the plane taxied, Chloe looked out the window. Sure enough, in the distance, near the main terminal, she could see a swarm of satellite trucks. But the plane didn't go there. It turned left, taxiing toward a quiet, remote hangar, usually reserved for private jets and diplomatic flights. The captain came on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London. For security reasons, we will be disembarking at a remote stand. Buses will take you to the terminal. We apologize for the inconvenience." The passengers grumbled, but they complied. When the seatbelt sign turned off, nobody moved to grab their bags. They all waited. They looked at seat 2A. Chloe stood up. She grabbed her backpack. Mr. Henderson stood up too. He blocked the aisle, holding back the other passengers. "After you, Miss Banks," he said. Chloe walked to the front door. Captain Harrison was standing there, his cap tucked under his arm. "Miss Banks," he said, "it was an honor to have you on board. Again, my deepest apologies for the start of this trip." "You were kind, Captain," Chloe said. "That matters." She stepped out of the plane. The cool London morning air hit her face. It was grey and misty, just like New York. But it felt fresh. At the bottom of the stairs, a sleek black Range Rover was waiting. 2 large men in suits stood by the door. One of them stepped forward. "Miss Banks, I'm with your father's security team. We're here to take you to the hotel." Chloe climbed into the back seat of the Range Rover. The leather was soft. The windows were tinted dark. As they drove away from the plane, Chloe looked back. She saw the other passengers filing onto a bus. She saw the plane that had been the stage for the worst and best day of her life. She pulled out her phone and dialed her dad. "I'm on the ground," she said. "Good," Riley said. "Get some sleep. You have a busy day tomorrow." "Why? What's tomorrow?" "Well," Riley chuckled, "I just bought Skyline Airlines." Chloe choked on air. "You what?" "The stock crashed 15% in 4 hours, Chloe. It was undervalued. I did a hostile takeover. We now own the majority share." "Dad, why?" "Because," Riley said, his voice dropping to that cold, iron tone again. "I realized that shutting them down for an hour wasn't enough. I need to make sure that company never treats anyone like that again. And the only way to ensure the culture changes is to own the culture." He paused. "Also, I fired the CEO, Richard Sterling, about 5 minutes ago." Chloe sat in the back of the car, stunned. Her father hadn't just gotten revenge. He had conquered the kingdom. "So," Riley continued, "get some rest, because as the new majority shareholder, I've appointed a new non-executive director to the board to oversee customer experience and diversity. Chloe closed her eyes, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Let me guess. It pays well," Riley said, "and you can wear a hoodie to the board meetings." 1 month later, the boardroom of Skyline Airlines was located on the 50th floor of a steel and glass tower in Dallas. It was a room designed to intimidate. The table was 30 feet long, made of polished mahogany that cost more than a house. The chairs were Italian leather. The view stretched all the way to the horizon. 12 men and 3 women sat around the table. They were the remaining board members and senior executives of Skyline. They wore bespoke suits, expensive watches, and expressions of nervous anticipation. They were waiting for the new owner. The hostile takeover had been swift and brutal. Riley Banks hadn't just bought shares. He had consumed the company. He had gutted the C-suite, fired the CEO, the COO, and the head of HR. The stock price had stabilized, largely because the public loved the narrative of the hoodie heiress. But internally, the airline was in chaos. The heavy double doors swung open. Riley Banks walked in. He was wearing a dark charcoal suit and no tie. He looked every bit the titan of industry he was. He walked to the head of the table, but he didn't sit down. He stood behind the chair, placing his hands on the back of it. "Good morning," Riley said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. "You all know who I am. You know why I'm here. You know that I could fire every single one of you and replace you with an algorithm by lunch." The executives shifted uncomfortably. One man, the VP of Operations, cleared his throat. "Mr. Banks, we are ready to implement your cost-cutting strategies." "I'm not interested in cost-cutting," Riley interrupted. "I'm interested in culture. Skyline has been rotting from the inside for years. You prioritized profit over people. You prioritized status over service. And that ends today." Riley gestured to the door. "I'm not the chairman of this board. I'm too busy running the back end of the world. I've appointed someone else to lead this airline into the new century." Every head turned to the door. Chloe Banks walked in. She wasn't wearing a power suit. She wasn't wearing heels. She was wearing a crisp, clean, black blazer over a grey hoodie, and on her feet were her battered Converse sneakers. She looked calm. She looked ready. She walked to the head of the table. Riley pulled the chair out for her. She sat down. For a moment, there was silence. The older men at the table looked at her with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. They saw a 22-year-old girl. Chloe placed her phone on the table. She looked around the room, making eye contact with every single person. "My father bought this airline," Chloe began, her voice steady. "But I'm the one who's going to fix it. We aren't just in the business of moving bodies from point A to point B. We are in the business of dignity." She slid a folder across the table to the VP of Marketing. "Open it," she said. He opened it. It was a mocked-up advertisement. It featured a photo of a diverse group of passengers, young, old, rich, poor, all smiling. The tagline read, "Skyline, where every passenger is first class." "We are getting rid of the status checks at the gate," Chloe said. "We are retraining every single member of the flight crew on unconscious bias, and we are implementing a new policy. If a crew member mistreats a passenger based on appearance, they don't just get a warning. They answer to me." "But Miss Banks," the VP of Finance objected, "eliminating the exclusivity of first class, we might lose our high-value flyers." "Mr. Henderson doesn't think so," Chloe said. "Henderson? The passenger in 2B, Chloe smiled. "He just bought a corporate contract for his entire hedge fund to fly exclusively with us, because he said he finally trusts the leadership. We didn't lose value, gentlemen. We gained trust, and trust is the most expensive currency on Earth." She leaned forward. "Now let's talk about the new uniforms. The heels are mandatory no longer. If our crew isn't comfortable, they can't be kind. We're switching to sneakers." A murmur of surprise went around the room. But looking at Chloe, looking at the stock numbers on the screen which were slowly ticking up. Nobody dared to argue. Meanwhile, in a Greyhound bus station, New Jersey, Brenda Miller sat behind a plexiglass window. The station was loud, smelling of diesel fumes and stale coffee. "Next," she called out, her voice devoid of energy. A young man stepped up. He threw a crumpled ticket on the counter. "Bus to Philly. Is it on time?" "It's running 10 minutes late," Brenda sighed, scanning the ticket. "Man, this service sucks," the guy grumbled. "You guys are useless." Brenda looked up. She wanted to snap. She wanted to say, "Do you know who I am? I used to serve champagne to diplomats." But she didn't say anything. She couldn't. Her name was blacklisted from every airline in the world. The video of her humiliation had 50 million views. She had lost her pension. She had lost her status. She was lucky to have this job at all. She looked at the small TV mounted in the corner of the waiting room. It was playing CNN. The headline flashed, "The Hoodie Revolution, How Chloe Banks is Changing the Skies." On the screen, Brenda saw Chloe. She looked radiant, confident, standing next to a Skyline plane that had been repainted with a new logo. Brenda looked down at her own uniform, a cheap polyester vest that scratched her neck. She handed the ticket back to the young man. "Have a safe trip," she whispered. It was a lesson she learned 30 years too late. Arrogance is a loan, and eventually life calls in the debt. The tarmac, JFK. 6 months after the incident, Chloe stood on the observation deck at JFK. It was raining again, but she didn't mind. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her dad. "Stock is up 20%. Proud of you, pumpkin." Chloe smiled. She watched a Skyline 787 push back from the gate. She knew the crew on board. She knew they were wearing comfortable shoes. She knew they were trained to look at a passenger's eyes, not their clothes. She had taken a moment of humiliation and turned it into a movement. She had taken a bully's power and used it to empower thousands. She pulled up her hood, shielding herself from the wind. She wasn't just the hoodie heiress anymore. She was the pilot of her own destiny. And as the plane lifted off, piercing through the grey clouds into the blue sky above, Chloe Banks finally felt the one thing she had wanted that day in the lounge. She felt peace. And that is the story of how one moment of judgment led to $1 billion revolution. It's a powerful reminder that you never truly know who you are dealing with. Brenda thought she was kicking off a nobody, but she was actually waking up a giant. It forces us to ask ourselves, how many times have we judged someone based on what they were wearing, or how they looked? In a world where we can be anything, Chloe Banks taught us the most important thing to be is kind. Because you never know when the person in the hoodie might just own the plane. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more stories about arrogance meeting reality, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. I'll see you in the next story. Stay humble, guys.